There's a phenomenon that takes place every single year. In fact, multiple times a year that is kind of not explainable, right? It seems like something that shouldn't happen, yet happens so consistently. And that phenomenon is that small 5-10 man startups end up beating large companies. How the hell does this happen? A large company has millions, sometimes even billions of dollars in their bank account. They have thousands of employees. How are they beaten by a 5-man team? In this video, you're going to learn why that happens consistently and why I'm on team startup while everybody else is on team big company and why everybody else is wrong. So this is a very interesting law which says that the square root of the number of employees in a company do 50% of the work. So let's do some math on that, right? Let's take some easy numbers for us to work with. Let's say you have 9 employees in a company. That's a small company. That's a tiny company, right? What's the square root of 9? The number comes up to 3. Now let's take a 100-man company. What is the square root of 100? And the answer is 10. So you're saying that in a tiny company, 3 people do the hard work, and in a medium-sized company, 10 people do the hard work. 3 and 10 are not that far away. It just looks like there's a difference in 7 personnel. And you're also saying that in a mid-sized company, 90 people are doing the other 50% of the work, right? Whereas in a small company, that's just 6 people. How does this work out? And these numbers get even more mind-boggling as you scale. Now, this works because of the way companies and people are designed. See, when people join a company, they're most often not interested in how well the company does. In fact, the bigger a company, the less impact you create, so the less interested you are in adding additional impact. You do what's asked of you, you're probably doing it for a promotion, for your own selfish reasons, and maybe because of that, the company might improve a little bit. But with a small company, everybody out there is hungry. Now, I'll tell you a good parallel or a good example of this, right? Assume you put 2 teams to play PUBG against each other. In one team, you have a bunch of hungry 18-year-olds who play PUBG professionally. In the other team, you put a bunch of people, maybe 5 people, who really don't care so much about PUBG, who've never played PUBG and are probably just, interested in reading papers, right? They're not there to play a game and they're just being forced to because maybe you're paying them $100 to do it. So team A, the kids, the 18-year-olds who play PUBG professionally, they're doing it because they enjoy the game. They're doing it because they want those classic headshots. They're doing it for the crowd. And the other team is doing it because they're forced to. Maybe because you paid them some money to. Who do you think is going to win? So as you guessed, it's going to be the young people who really care about PUBG, right? The people whose reputation is on the line, who really, really love the game are going to win. So the point is, hunger matters. And the thesis is even more viable when you have a small team that's working with software. Because software gives you that unfair advantage against large armies on the other side. And I'll come to why in a bit. In fact, I'd even go on to say that the big companies that got to where they are today were once small companies with a small, hungry team, and they are unable to replicate it again at scale. Think about Facebook. Facebook did a wonderful job when they started, right? It was a small team. It was Mark Zuckerberg and his friends trying to figure something out. They were very driven and they won once. But think about Facebook's successes past that. From the core team building projects, now it went to them acquiring Instagram, acquiring WhatsApp, acquiring Oculus and making that Meta. Why couldn't Facebook build all of that in-house? The reason is all good companies, all good projects are created by a small core team who are willing to work till 1 a.m. in the night and figure it out, who are not there just for a salary, who would probably be there even if there's no salary, even if they were not paid well. And that's hard to find. And it's not just Facebook, right? You look at Google, they built the search engine. Larry and Sergey, they actually put in the effort. They spent time in a garage to build the search engine. But everything beyond that was an acquisition. Gmail, Google Docs, G Suite, all small acquisitions, some even large acquisitions. Nest, which is the entire Google Home thing, again an acquisition. They are going after the other small teams who have really had that hunger, displayed that hunger because of Price's law. So the theory goes that to expand a company beyond its first money-making idea, you probably need to acquire other companies. And this is Price's law in action because the first company has gotten to the size of inefficiency. Most of the people in that company are doing nothing, are there just for the salary, and are doing what they're told to do. And think about software, because most of these companies today are building software. Even the ones who were in real estate like 10 years ago have now moved all of that stuff online, even though what they eventually sell is still a physical building, and that's still going to be offline. But 90% of the distribution, 90% of selling the client, 90% sometimes of showing the client has now moved online. And the problem with online is that there's a bottleneck, what I call the upper ceiling of the number of developers that you can put on a particular project. And you can't put any more developers and get more productivity than that. For example, you can't put more than say 30 or 40 developers on a project, which in itself is a huge number, and expect that to be more productivity. So it's basically your 30 versus the other team's 30. Even if the other team has 100,000 people, it's only those 30 people that really matter. And that's what started happening. That's why software is allowing the new players to beat the larger ones, because of that critical limit of the number of developers that can be put on a single project. And it's not just developers. It could be developers, designers, product guys. I'm just talking about the entire product team. Now you might ask me, Varun, it's impossible that XYZ company has 1,000 employees and only 30 people are doing all the work. You're telling me what? That the other 970 are doing nothing? Well, they're probably doing very, very, very little. As little as it takes to get stuff done. Now you might even ask me, right? Why are companies hiring more than 30 people then? If 30 people in the software space, if 30 people is the limit, why are people going to 40, 50, 10,000? And the answer is a mixture of two things. A, as a CEO, you want to hire more people. You're like, hey, maybe here's a gap. I can get this person on, so that you make everyone's life a little bit easier, right? You're able to experiment on new stuff. In fact, even in a large company, a lot of what goes on is experimentation. Secondly, you are also kind of forced to, because of the way tax works. Look, with corporate tax, suppose you're making 100 rupees and you're not burning that 100 rupees or a big chunk of it, you're going to give 30% of whatever is left to the government at the end of the year. Companies do not want to do that. They'd rather hire talent than give 1/3 of what they've made to the government. So hiring people is truly a hedge against that. And also a lot of people's roles go into supporting activities or activities that are not directly related to product, but do help. I'll give you an example. If you look at the company Zoho, Zoho started out making software, right? They're a bootstrapped Indian company that's now worth billions of dollars. They would put out these products for like $20, $30 a month. Very reasonable, very affordable across the world. Once Zoho won a few markets and became reasonably large in those markets, they realized that, hey, we will now hire more people and now solve our data center problem. Why should we be dependent on Amazon's data centers? Let's build our own. That's a big undertaking. But it adds no extra value to the user. You can sell that as value, but when a user chooses between two companies, they're going to care whether it's on Zoho's data server or Amazon data server. So when a new company comes out, if they build something that Zoho's built, them having their own data center is not going to matter. They can just use Amazon's data center. Maybe, Zoho will save a little bit of money because what they're into is optimization. But this new company is trying to disrupt. It is trying to beat Zoho at its own game. So it will be okay with using other people's technology as long as the final product that they show to the customer looks and feels good. The difference between, say, a Scenes today and, say, a Discord is the fact that we use a lot of third-party technology to make our lives easier, to make our work faster, whereas a Discord would have replaced a lot of things that they were reliant on and build all of that in-house. Right? It's a cost-saving mechanism. So what I'm trying to say is companies go from attack mode to optimization mode as they get bigger. And optimization mode requires a lot of people. The next thing is that when you try creating a new product, you realize that you often won't get the answer right the first time. You try it, you take it to the market, and you realize your initial hypothesis was wrong. Maybe the market wants something slightly different. Right? Maybe this is not the right way to approach the market. Maybe your marketing is wrong. So essentially, you realize that you have to pivot a lot. The problem is, it is impossible or very, very, very difficult to pivot a large company. When I have 5 people in my team, I can tell them, hey, this is not working, we're switching this. But try that with 10,000 people. Half of them are going to get worried about their job. Oh my God, company's changing what we're doing, we're going to die, and I would rather go work at this other company that's paying me the same amount or slightly more. It's hard to communicate strategy with 10,000 people when you change. Do you get 10,000 people on a Zoom call and tell them we're changing strategy tonight, right? Do you want the janitors involved in that call? Do you want senior management involved in that call? You'll have to shut down so many R&D projects, right? So many people lose their jobs the minute you pivot. And plus there's so many sunk costs. A company with 10,000 employees probably has a lot of investors, right? I have 40 investors on my cap table. And if we needed to pivot tomorrow, it's still a difficult process. But for a company with which is maybe public, to pivot is it's hell. It's dangerous. Everywhere on the media, people are going to shit on you. It is not a fun place to be. But small companies, they have nothing to lose. They can keep pivoting until they find something of value. They can keep trying the shovel in different places till one place reveals gold. A large company, very difficult because they're going with a drilling machine, like the biggest drilling machine that doesn't move. When they get gold, they can go very deep, but they can't move and go to the next place and drill. And the problem is this game of Chinese whispers, right? What the CEO says by the time it reaches that underling would have gone through so many permutations and combinations. The CEO would have said, I really like orange. And by the time it reaches the underling, the statement would be, I really like bananas, right? So things change, and they change because of these games of Chinese whisper, which means that people, when they're communicating, slightly misinterpret what they've heard and slightly miscommunicate what they're trying to say. And of course, the larger the company, the more the politics. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. An idle company is the devil's enterprise. Look, when people have nothing to do, there's a lot of politics that goes on. I remember this old friend of mine who was talking about a fan company, and he was telling me the minute you enter those doors, it feels like everyone there is going to stab you in the back just to get a promotion. And that is very, very true. Large companies are very competitive. Everyone's vying for the same promotion, for the same role, because you have 10,000 people trying to climb up on top of each other. In a 5-man company, at max, there might be 2 people competing for the role. But in a large company, there are too many people competing for a role, and people realize that the best way to get that role is boss pleasing, right? You please your boss, maybe he will write a good review about you. The problem is, boss pleasing is not market pleasing. At the end of the day, you are not building products for your boss. You are building products for the market, and the market will decide whether it's good or not, and that takes a different level of effort. And usually, when you're building for the market, you must be willing to piss off your boss. And because the boss doesn't care whether the company does well or not, as long as the company has enough runway and his salaries are paid and he looks good, he does not care. He is going to push his agenda. The market doesn't care about anybody's agenda. It cares about what it wants. You have to give it what it wants to make money. And I'll tell you one big difference between you and me. You may not believe that one person is better than 1,000 people. I have no problems believing that one person is better than 1,000 people in certain contexts. I'll tell you where your line of thinking comes from. Your line of thinking, and most humans' line of thinking, comes from the idea that everything humans do competitively is like boxing or football. We think that employees in 2 companies, where one company has 5 employees, the other has 1,000, you believe it's like fighting competition, where obviously in a fight, 100 people will beat 50 people, right? One person definitely can't beat 100 people in a fight or a war. He's going to die. But that's not true in business. Because like I said, of that limit of 30 people, you have the best 30 people out there for a product, you probably can't get beaten easily. Even if the other team has an unlimited number of people, because the bottleneck is the number of people that can effectively work on a product. Everyone else is extras. And I'll give you a very good example of how one person can beat 1,000 people in a certain context. You can take 1,000 bricklayers and you can take one app developer. Suppose the context set is that I want to build an app. The 1,000 bricklayers, even given 1 year each, cannot build what that one app developer will build in 1 month. If it's a senior app developer, he or she will probably be able to do it even faster. Now you understand what I'm talking about? The context is different. One group is unskilled with what you're trying to do. The other group, which is that one developer, is very focused and very skilled and knows exactly what to do. It's often very similar in a company, right? Because talent here is also the bottleneck. In India, if you want to hire an engineer now, like a senior engineer, the salaries are easily 50 lakhs to a crore. Avalon is paying 50 lakhs to certain engineers, right? It's gotten crazy here. And the reason is because there are very few good developers. It is hard for you as a company to have 1,000 good engineers. It's a war for talent which thousands of companies are fighting for. I personally believe that there are not more than 10,000 really good senior developers in India. And there are thousands of companies competing for that same pool. Not everyone's going to get it. And the ones that do are not going to give those developers away. And of course, this is also reflected in their salaries. The senior developers, and Avalon's paying some senior developers 50 lakhs an annum, right? Some people are being paid like 1 crore, 2 crores. The salaries are insane. People are giving them BMW bikes. People are not giving the same salaries and BMW bikes to even a marketeer. That's why that parallel is so big. Small pool, everyone's dying to get the cream of the crop. It's not the same with other roles. And there's a point I have to make about context-based skills in the physical world versus in the digital world. In the real world, one Ronaldo or Messi can easily beat one app developer in football. Obviously, that the app developer has no way he can win. But if you put 1,000 app developers in front of Messi on a football field, there is no way Messi can go past. But even 1,000 Messis will not be able to beat one app developer at building an app. That's the point I'm trying to tell you. That's the big difference between the physical world and the digital world. So there's code and there's distribution, right? With distribution, the rules are often the same. You can take 1,000 interns and even they will not be able to do anything against one Tanmay Bhatt. Tanmay could put up one video a year and that is going to pull more views than all these 1,000 interns who've been working on YouTube for the last 3 months or 4 months, right? It's very unlikely that any of them is going to pull up 1 million views. That's the cool thing about this stored leverage, right? Distribution is one more awesome thing that you can't just copy or clone by adding people or throwing people to the problem. There are billions of people trying on Instagram to get some views, but they can't beat a Virat Kohli who already has a certain number of views. So apart from code, it's also the reach that really matters, and you can't throw people at the problem. This is why small companies and startups with reach and good developers often beat large companies, even companies 10,000 to 100,000 their size, because this is not a physical sport. The digital world has different rules and there are bottlenecks. That's why small companies can beat large companies. That's it for me. Bye.